afternoon and happy holidays. This is Chuck from Monocoque Metalworks. We're finally coming down the home stretch on this very early 61 coupe. We've had this in our shop for a long time, and we actually did the body shell at the old shop. So it's been sitting around for a while, and we had a lot of hurdles to overcome with the bonnet because it's got an early bonnet. You can see that we just finished this. If you go back a few videos, we've been talking about that for the past few weeks. This is the correct early welded louver and welded flange bonnet. So come on over and take a look at that. What I want to show you today are some of the nuances of a very early 61 car and a coupe in particular. So over here we've got a welded louver bonnet. These are the original louvers from his bonnet that went into a new center section. You can see all the spot welds from the welded flanges. You only do that on the early bonnets, and this will need a lot of work to smooth those all out. That's why the factory quit doing it that way. And if you look around, you can see we've still got a few little things to finish. There's always a lot of little stuff. There's a little dent there. Because this is an early car and a 61, look over here. Instead of having the little top hat piece that goes in that holds the bonnet hinge with a bolt, we've got a stud here with a nut. These are a major pain to deal with when you're fitting the bonnet and taking it on and off. No doubt that's why they got rid of that. So we'll have that extra to deal with while we're doing the bonnet. We hammer and dolly did a lot of restoration on the original picture frame. So that is the original picture frame. This is a 2-digit early coupe. So it's one of the first 50 that were made left-hand drive. And the early cars just have tons and tons of interesting little things on them. This is not an outside lock car, but it still carries the screw holes for the outside lock latch. And then if you look up here, these 3 holes here had large rivets in them, and there was a little piece that came out with a rubber bumper that held the bonnet, and they ditched that. That only the earliest cars have that. Also, on an early car, they have a little indent here for the brake box, all the like scissors mechanisms and adjusters in there. I think what they found was that as they adjusted them, they ran out of movement room. So the later 3/8 have a long slot in here with a piece underneath that fills it in. So that's another real early feature. We've talked about this before, but on the bulkhead side panel, this little edge piece is riveted on in later cars. In the early cars, it's all one piece. Not really sure why they changed that. Might have been ease of manufacturing. If you look up in here, I'll switch spots with you. See these crazy little keyhole shapes? They are to hold on the bonnet latches. These take the weirdest little nuts that are in this little cage, and they've got like a T-slot, and you stick them in there and twist them. I almost said it's the nuttiest little thing. They got rid of that and just put little speed clips in, so that's another early feature. Obviously, it's a flat floor car, and it's got the flat rear bulkhead. This is all original here. This car actually wasn't that rusty. It had just suffered a lot of abuse. It does have all new floors and inner and outer sills in it. Now, also while we're on the inside, I call this thing the parcel tray, the piece that flips up and down. You can see where it was just screwed directly into the body here. But then these little flanges that are part of the body on the side are only for the early coupes as well, and they take a different board that goes in here. Now, you stay here, I'll go around. The earlier cars, and they did this for a few years, this whole inner wing is multiple pieces, and you can see where they put the pieces together and just put a few pop rivets in at the factory, and then they would come along and spot weld it, and they just left the rivets in place. And you can see here that they didn't even bother putting a rivet in there. I guess it didn't line up, or I don't know what the deal was, and they didn't do it over there either. And you can see that piece kind of popping up as well. And this is the typical stuff. We try not to over-restore, leave that the way it is. Now, the whole roof and tail is different on a 61 coupe. They actually have their own quarter windows. The later cars have a little indentation here where the chrome piece comes up and is the quarter window hinge. This doesn't have that. Takes a special piece here. If you don't have it, you're in big trouble. That's why if you do one of these really early cars, you gotta have the whole car because you'll go nuts trying to find the pieces. They're just not out there. Now, in the back, this whole back part, the whole pressing is completely different from later cars. By the time this car was made, and again, it's one of the first 50, they had already made over 1,000 Roadsters. They were having a lot of trouble getting the coupes off the ground, and I think it was because of all the body work that needed to be done back here. On the later coupes, this is all one giant stamping, and they just boom, stamped it out, and I don't know what machine they had to do it, but it rolled this all around, and this is just all one piece of metal. On this car, there's like 15 pieces of metal in here, and all they've got on their wings and their roof and their lower tonneau panel is just a folded over flange. If you come in here, switch spots again, you can see all these spot welds, and then this is a separate piece. Doesn't have that little double rolled edge. It's only got the single roll on it. And then there's multiple pieces all around. Now, if you come back over here, we'll switch again. On the later cars, I talked to you about that big stamping, and there's one leaded seam that goes like this as it kind of all comes together, and it's got lead in it there. And if you've had your car stripped down, you've seen that. This early coupe has 4 leaded seams like a Roadster would. So we've got lead going right across here, and I can see it. It probably won't pick up on the movie. But the lead is right there like that. And then we've got lead here like this, and then up here. So they're putting together all these pieces. They're putting all these little flanges in. It was just a lot of metal finishing work. Now, if you look here, the later cars have a separate piece here for, we call it the tail lamp filler, and it's stitched in here and here. This is all one stamped piece. And then most early 3/8 do not have a pocket in here in the back of the taillight. You see how that's all open, all right? Now, if you come around, no, wait, stay right there. We got a lot to cover. The fuel lid is completely different on these early coupes. This is the original fuel lid from this car. It's still in the original paint. This car was Old English white with a red interior. And you can see how she just fits right in there. Now this is a fuel lid from a typical Series 1 coupe. It fits both of those Series 1 4.2s perfectly. See, completely different animal. So you got to have that just right. Now come around here. You come around this side. On these early cars, they did not have any finishing panel here. All they had was a little piece of aluminum that was covered in vinyl that was spot welded, or not spot welded, screwed into here. And you can see the little screw holes there. That's different. This hole is much smaller on the early cars. Later cars had a big hole here. This hole, they always look like lightning holes, like aircraft holes. What these holes are really for is being able to access these seams when they're spot welding the car together. After a lifetime of trying to build these things myself, you figure out what all that stuff is for. And so that's what that is for, getting right here to this seam, and it's obviously a lot easier if it's bigger. So after a couple years, they open that right up. You come over here, obviously I said the whole back is different. The hatch itself is different, and if you go back, I think earlier this spring when I restored this hatch, I talked about this. I had the whole skin off of this. There was a lot of rust in there. We had to fix it. But right here where the hinges mount on, every hatch that you'll see will have an indent here. This little hinge mounting area is indented, but this is flat. That indent steps down and gives this a lot of strength. This is very weak. So when I had this off, I have big 16 gauge stiffener pieces in here so that we don't have that weakness. They also take their own special hinge. Now, if you will just hold tight for 1 second, I forgot to get a later hinge. Got one right here. This is the typical hinge for a later E-type. You can see it's a cast aluminum piece. all right? And the holes are kind of staggered like that. They, you know, they kind of goes up in there like that. I think they're actually staggered like that a little bit. This is the early coupe hinge. It is a solid piece of steel that's cut out. You can see the holes are straight. They're much farther apart. If you have one of these it's this hatch, these hinges, and that body. You cannot mix and match. All right, so that's the early hatch, hinges, and tail. Now if you come over here, the doors, they're all done, came out great. We just primed this stuff earlier this week. These are the doors that we talked about before with the spot welded top piece. You only have to go back a couple videos to see that, where that's a separate piece. That's a 61 feature. And then if you look on the inside, all over this car, you're seeing places where they're kind of making it up as they go along. You can see they've got two different sets of holes here for the piece that holds the window winder. Actually, the window winder goes up here, but there's like this bracket that goes there. So that's different. The door hinges themselves are different. They're basically the same, but the casting is a little bit different. And then you'll also see where the drilled holes for the striker, go ahead and come around and zoom in on those. I also forgot to get the regular style door hinge. This is the typical hinge, and you can see where the casting's a little different. I don't know if they decided they needed to beef it up or what, but also they've got the holes drilled in both sides, so this aluminum piece goes both ways versus the early style. You can see there's the right and there's the left. The striker, not the striker, the check strap is on the opposite sides. It's hard to come up with this stuff on the fly as you're trying to get through these videos and not have them take half an hour. Of course, I could talk about this all day, but that's not the idea. So there it is. We are pretty much wrapping up our year. We just got the Christmas music on and wanted to get this one done by the end of the year. I don't think that's going to happen. We need to mount the bonnet next, and because we had to build this bonnet out of some NOS pieces and some of the original pieces, these are new frame rails. This is a restored bonnet carrier. You know, the new sills have been put on it and all. We're going to have a lot of bonnet fitting work. Luckily here, with the tools and the experience we have, we can make any bonnet fit any E-type. It's just not something that takes a couple hours. So that's it. Hopefully this one will be done soon and out the door. I hope you guys have a great holiday season, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.